People always say, trust the science. But what does that actually look like when you're making life or death decisions? Well, today we're going to break down a major study from The Lancet that deals with exactly that, a serious bacterial threat in Vietnam. The facts are clear, the stakes are high. Let's get right into it.
So let's start with a puzzle that's right at the heart of this. There's this bacteria that, for tons of kids, just lives harmlessly in the back of their nose and throat. It's just a passenger. But at the same time, this exact same bug is one of the world's biggest killers of children. So how can both of those things be true?
To really understand the risk, you have to first understand the opponent. So let's properly introduce the subject of this entire investigation.
Okay, its official name is Streptococcus pneumonia. Most people just call it pneumococcus. Now, think of it like this. For a lot of people, it just hangs out in the back of the nose and throat, not causing any trouble at all. But if it gets a chance to break out and invade other parts of the body, like the lungs, the brain, or the blood, it can cause incredibly severe, life-threatening infections.
So here's the situation on the ground in Vietnam. You've got this known threat, S. pneumoniae, all over the place. And you've also got a known defense against it, the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, or PCV. The problem is that vaccine isn't part of the country's standard immunization schedule. And that right there creates a massive gap in the data, a gap that this research was specifically designed to fill. Look, when you need an answer that's big enough to guide a whole country, another single small study just isn't going to cut it. To build a truly solid case, these researchers didn't just add one more piece to the puzzle. They decided to combine all the best evidence that was already out there.
What they did is called a systematic review and a meta-analysis. You can basically think of it as a super study. Instead of starting from scratch, it gathers up all the other relevant studies, checks them for quality, and then combines their results into one much stronger conclusion. It's all about finding the true signal hidden in all the noise. And believe me, the process was intense. First, they cast this enormous net, searching through 20 different scientific databases in both English and Vietnamese to find every possible study. Then came the really hard part. They took almost 600 studies and filtered them all the way down to just the 15 that met their strict quality standards. Finally, they pulled together all the data from those top-tier studies, giving them a massive combined dataset of over 13,000 children.
Now, I know this chart looks a little complicated, but what it shows is actually really simple. It shows the hard work. This is the real flowchart from the study. You can see how they started with hundreds of potential papers and carefully whittled them down step by step until only the most solid, reliable data was left. This whole process is designed to strip out any bias or opinion, so you're left with what the evidence truly shows.
So, after all of that incredibly thorough work, what did the data actually say? Let's take a look at the findings. The first number, the big headline, is this: 33%. When they pooled all the data together, they found that on average, 1 out of every 3 children in Vietnam is carrying this potentially dangerous bacteria. Right away, that tells you the sheer scale of the potential problem.
But it gets even more interesting when you dig a little deeper. See, S. pneumoniae isn't just one thing. It comes in different types, or serotypes, and the data showed a really clear pattern. Just look at this chart. You can see that just 3 of those types, 6A, 19F, and 6B, are responsible for more than half of all the cases they found. Now that is a critical piece of information.
And if that weren't concerning enough, there's another huge problem: antibiotic resistance. The data showed that the bacteria is becoming immune to our best weapons. 64% were resistant to penicillin, a go-to antibiotic. And for another common class, macrolides, the resistance was as high as 91%. That means our standard playbook for treating these infections is failing, and it's failing fast. So let's just recap for a second. We've got a widespread problem, a few specific strains causing most of the trouble, and treatments that are quickly becoming useless. It sounds pretty bleak, but this is the exact moment where the evidence stops just defining the problem and starts pointing directly to a solution. And here it is. This is the crucial connection. This chart shows the different bacterial strains that are targeted by existing WHO-approved vaccines. Now remember those top 3 strains we just saw that are most common in Vietnam, 6A, 19F, and 6B? Well, take a look. The vaccines are specifically designed to go after them. It's an almost perfect match between the problem and the tool we have to fix it. But look, any credible analysis doesn't just show you the flashy findings. It also has to be honest about its limits. Good science is always clear about what it doesn't prove. So let's talk about this study's limitations.
First, and this is really important, we need to be precise with our words. This study measured bacterial carriage.
That just means the bacteria is present, the person isn't necessarily sick. It did not measure active infection, which is when the bacteria is actually causing harm. Carriage is a major risk factor, which is why we study it, but it isn't the same thing as the disease itself.
So let's just lay out the main limitations, plain and simple. First, as we just said, this is a review of carriage, not active disease. It's a measure of risk. Second, all that antibiotic resistance data is from studies published before 2014, which means the problem today could actually be even worse. And finally, whenever you combine different studies, there are always going to be some small differences in how they did things. None of this invalidates the conclusion, but it is crucial context.
So, after you weigh the powerful findings against those honest limitations, what's the final confident takeaway? What's the bottom line?
It really all boils down to these 4 points. The problem, 1 in every 3 kids is a carrier. The strains, just a handful of types are causing most of the trouble. The threat, our antibiotics are in serious jeopardy. And the solution, the vaccines we already have are specifically built to fight the exact strains causing the biggest problem in Vietnam.
And I want to be very clear. That's not my opinion, I'm just laying out the evidence. The final word here belongs to the researchers themselves, and they state their conclusion directly in The Lancet. Based on the mountain of data they analyzed, their recommendation is completely unambiguous.
The whole point of this was to walk you through the evidence, honestly, and without the hype. The data itself leads us to one final, unavoidable question. When the facts line up this perfectly, a clear problem, a known enemy, and a ready-made solution, you have to ask yourself, what is the real-world cost of doing nothing?